Awesome. So I'm just going to take us over to my Chrome browser. And what I'm going to do is take you guys through, installing the solution and then kind of using it. I have some vacation transactions just up here to kind of use during the demonstration, but I thought it'd be helpful to first go in and find the solution, put it in the spreadsheet. I'm going to show you how it works. So first you go to extensions, you go to Tiller Community Solutions, go to the solutions, and then add a solution. And you'll find on the right-hand side a new side that's coming up. And what you can see is there's a travel planner, which is what we're going to download today and demonstrate. So just click the travel planner, add to spreadsheet right below, and then it will be automatically added to your budget. And I just cleaned up some of my, like my monthly budget and everything just for demonstration purposes, but everything would be around here, the categories, transactions, your budget, and all of that. It's just a separate tab. And what comes through is really the template that we built out. So I'm just going to take out some of the inputs so that we can redo it together. So
I had forgotten that we left all that kind of sample content in there, Kat.
oh, no worries. It's totally fine. So this is a completely clean travel planner. You can see that there's 3 different sections. So you have the actual travel planner on the left-hand side. That is where you view your budget, and there's 2 different ways to view it, which we'll get into. The middle is where you really start out. So you can, hide the left-hand side if you want, but really just start with the travel schedule. And then from there, we build in the details. How is your money going to be spent on this trip? So right off, I'm going to just put in some trips. So let's say we have a trip starting in June. So you put the start date, the end date, and the destination. And it looks like it's actually not flowing through. Let me just refresh really quick. It happened to me before.
Sometimes the behavior, Kat, during Zoom sessions can get a little wonky. Sometimes, like my
Hmm.
keyboard isn't very responsive, so you might just have to be patient.
Okay, there we go. Yep. I think refreshing might have helped. And then I'm going to put the destination. So let's say it's France. And then momentarily, you should see the travel days just calculate automatically from the start and end to give you a total duration. And then the trip ID is also populated. Is it showing up on your end?
It's not yet, but I've seen this. I had this problem yesterday. I almost wonder if something changed with Chrome recently,
Hmm.
but yeah, in Zoom, it honestly was taking 20 seconds sometimes for things that I typed to appear. You
Weird.
can see on the top right there that it's like kind of got that progress bar still going.
Mhm. Ah, there we go. Awesome. So you can see 2 weeks in a day. That's how long the trip will be. Gives you a trip ID. So all of your expenses are going to be for this trip ID. And what's good about it is we have uniquely identified it as a trip to France in 2022. So if you go to France every single year, you're going to have a separate trip ID for each of those trips. You can track your spending for those trips. So I'm going to put another trip in here um, next year, so in 2023, planning very far ahead. And it's going to be a domestic trip, Colorado, and you'll see the travel days and trip ID populate momentarily. But while we wait there, we can head over to the travel details section where we have drop downs that are now given 2 different options based on the trip ID that was generated. So you have France, you have Colorado, and this is where you input your expenses, what you hope to spend on these trips. So I'm just going to do 2 for France and then 2 for Colorado. And I'm going to say that I'm going to stay in the Airbnb. And in France, that'll be 2,500. And then there's going to be some transportation costs, flights, train. And then the same thing for Colorado. Different expenses, but Um, Now, I'm planning the trip. There will be more expenses that likely come up, maybe ski tickets if we're getting closer to the trip and, for the ski trip. And all that stuff you can kind of customize and add to the travel details section. And once you have it, you have a tag that is generated from your inputs. And this tag is used to go into the transactions page right down below. And that will pull all of the transactions that come through into the travel planner for you to really assess where you're at in terms of spending towards a trip. Um, so what I'm going to do is just tag them. So I'm going to take the tag text, head to my transactions page, and then I'm going to find the trip that I have the actual expense for. I'm going to go to the tag section and put the tag there. So it functions, if you use the gift planner, it functions very similarly, where we're using that tag to identify the trip, the actual, expense and what trip it's for, just like it uses that the tag to identify what gift is for who.
And
So
Kat, if you had multiple like airfare and a train, could you have use the same tag?
yeah, you could do that. You can use the same, you can use different if you want to, kind of get more granular. And if this is the train, this is the flight, or if it's just transportation, you're putting one, number to that. You can just use it for one and use the same tag. And then for Colorado, I'm just gonna put over my tag so it flows through. Transportation. All right, so now we're all tagged and ready to go look at the travel planner section. So I have these expenses, Airbnb, American Airline flights, and now I'm ready to go really view all of this information in this travel planner. And what we did is we created it so that you can sort by either trip ID. So you can look at all of your spending for one trip, or you can sort for the year of travel. So let's say both of these trips were in 2022. Right now they're not, but if they were, you'd be able to see all of your travel spending in that year. So let's start in trip ID. And then your selection is either, France or Colorado, each one. And I'm going to click France. And then you should automatically get the fields below populated.
The slowness is a little frustrating. It usually isn't like this.
Okay.
It's usually very responsive. Heather, are you filing a ticket with Zoom right now?
Not quite. Maybe we should. I don't know what I'm sure that they get this complaint a lot, but I've definitely seen this too. On the webinar, I do the foundations webinar every week, and
Mhm.
I've definitely had those moments where it's just like crawling and I'm like, ah. Or the add-on taking forever to load. Yeah.
Oh, there you
There it
go.
goes.
Okay, awesome. So you can see that it identifies that this trip is going to France, your travel days, the budget is taking a minute to come over. Okay, there we go.
Almost there. My goodness. It's going to be like a full minute.
Oh my goodness.
There we go.
Okay,
Hooray.
there we go. So you can see, the budget and then actual spending next to it, and then how much is available. And then it goes into further detail, where are you over, where are you on track, where are you under, right below. So it'll give you a breakdown. So the Airbnb, my budget was 2,500. I actually spent 3,000. So, I'm over budget in that expense. And I think if it loads completely, you'll see that this entire line is red, just to alert you to the fact that you overspent in that area.
Kat,
Um,
is this, would you recommend this workflow for people who more just want to do the planning side but didn't actually want to tag all the real transactions and use the actuals? Would you think it'd still be helpful?
Yeah, definitely. You could definitely just budget and build it that way. And just kind of keep track of each trip specific spending because I don't know about other people, but I like to plan trips far in advance and book maybe sometimes like the year ahead. And I want to capture, my spending in a prior year to really apply towards the next year and that trip. I want to really capture all that trip spending. So you could totally, I mean, you don't have to tag if you don't want to, but you could use it just to kind of organize your thinking and where you want to go in it, travel wise.
Do you want to show us the by year
Yeah,
selection, and then maybe we can
sure.
just jump to some questions?
Sure. So let me actually, yeah, let's do this first. So we can sort by year and then your selections, once it loads maybe a little more, it'll show you the different years that you can select. So the only years that we have travel planned are 2022 and 2023. So those should be the two options.
Oh yeah, look, that thing finally turned red.
Oh
They're
yeah,
available. Just gotta
there
be
you
patient.
go.
And just while we're waiting, if anybody has questions about really how to use this, what or how Cat built it, or really anything, it's a great time to drop those questions in the Q&A. My goodness. All right. Well, maybe what I'll do, maybe I'll just ask you a question while we wait for that to go.
Sure. Yeah.
So, can you just tell me a little bit more about kind of like how this was kind of the most pressing need for you personally? Like, what about your
Hmm.
life or the way you think about finance that made this the thing that
Yeah.
you felt like was missing from your personal finance tooling?
Yeah. So when I heard about the challenge, I was like, oh, like, should I enter it? I don't know if I really have anything to add, but I remembered that I do have or I used to have a separate travel planning spreadsheet from Tiller. I would have an Excel spreadsheet on the side where I would literally do this exact same exercise, but in a very like not sophisticated way. And um, and then I was like, that's a great idea to propose because I think of travel sometimes by the year and total travel spending in aggregate that year, but then sometimes I want to look at each trip and look at what was my budget, where was I actually, and this kind of solution I fits in naturally with how I plan travel and how I think of it. So um, again, my inspiration is really from the gift planner, where you kind of do the same thing. It's just you're planning gifts for certain people. You don't have the same, I don't think, like annual view for it, but that really inspired me to think of this and to kind of tag things in the same way. And it looks like it has loaded. So you can select by either year, so 2022 or 2023. And if I select 2022, the output will be a little different. So it'll tell you how many trips were in that year. It'll tell you how many travel days you traveled that year across all of those trips. And then it'll give you the budget for that whole year and then your actual spending for that whole year, as well as if you were over or under or on track. So um, that's just a cool way to have a quick like glance at, okay, how many trips did I go on? Like maybe like how much was I planning to spend? How much was I over? And then right beneath under the blackish header, you'll see a breakdown of all those trips and all of the expenses that you had in that year.
I just want to sort of say around your idea, like you mentioned the idea of like seeing all your trips for a year in one place. I
Mm-hmm.
remember when we were talking about this template that that sounded complicated to me, and but I think it's really important that like kind of you as a traveler and you as a travel budgeter, like that
Mm-hmm.
was an important workflow for you because like a lot of times like people there's kind of like these opportunities to build a little thing to solve a problem as like a tiller team member, but I
Mm-hmm.
think having like it driven and built by someone who actually is like that's their thing and they feel really passionate and they have specific workflows, it makes the solution so much more meaningful and powerful, I think, for people in that headspace rather than me kind of just trying to guess at what's useful because I wouldn't have added that
Mm-hmm.
feature. It wasn't
Yeah.
intuitive to me. Can you tell me about just a little bit about kind of like what kind of traveler you are? Like, is that something that like you do explore, or are you like seeing
Not
family? Like,
not really. I mean, a few trips, during the year, nothing crazy. But I just really, it was just an area that I would lose track of like my spending, especially when it comes to like booking and paying for things in advance, and then really spending on the trip, and then just I couldn't like conceptual or like really get to a concrete number, of like how much was this actually, how much did it cost? Um, but I'm not a huge traveler. I just like to really, like a lot of people in the Taylor community, I just like to know how much things, cost, and how much, um, progress I'm making staying on track in certain areas. So I think this helps me, and I hope it helps other people have the same sense of really knowing how their money is spent.
It looks like we do have one question in the Q&A. Does that wrap up your demo? Do you want to start taking questions?
Yeah, sure. Let me stop sharing.
So Brian asks, I haven't used the tags worksheet a lot, but the way the travel planner works and the way statements worksheets work, would it be possible to use the travel planner for any kind of planning with the ID and tag generation feature? So event planning, remodel planning, project planning.
I think so, yeah. And especially, I mean, if you have a duration you can use, if it's like a project and you're working on it and you want to, I mean, I guess the duration doesn't matter so much. You just probably wouldn't have that in the trip, the ID. You could definitely use it. But yeah, it just has like travel terminology on the planner and everything. So like maybe you can customize that to meet your needs, but I totally think that you could repurpose it for that.
yeah, I think that sounds right. I think the kind of the seed of the whole tag comes from a date, and so certainly if what you're working on was date based, I think it might fit. But if it weren't, then there might be other ways to do it that were better. I also wanted to say that one of the limitations of the way the tags are built with dates is like if you start a trip and let's just say it starts on June 1st, like Kat said, and then you eventually move it to June 3rd. Oh wait, shoot, no, you'd have to move a month. Let's just say you moved it to July. One of the bummers is that those tagged expenses now have a different tag, and you actually have to go back into the transaction sheet and then change those tags, which have a new name that's generated off the new date. So I think especially if you're doing something that was like project based and you wanted to be kind of specific about when a project was going, but it got long or short or whatever, that might be an issue. Kat, one thing I want to ask you, is there another question, Heather?
Not yet, but feel free. Anybody else, if you have questions, get them in the Q&A.
One thing I wanted to ask you was if you had peeked at Brad Warren's Builder Challenge category scheduler, because it feels like that might actually be an interesting tool to pair with this.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that it would work really well together. And yeah, I downloaded it, and I'm working on filling it out. But yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, good.
Yeah, because one of the challenges with travel is that the expenses don't hit like necessarily right. Like you might buy a plane ticket 6 months ahead, and you kind of want to cluster and group that expense with that idea of that trip, which I think this tool does really well at. But the category schedule can actually be useful in terms of like actually making your budget go up and down when you believe those charges would hit.
Yep.
How about another question? Just is this like the most complicated template you built? Like, were there any surprises or insights you kind of got as you put this together?
I mean, I am not a spreadsheet builder, really. I'm pretty limited in my knowledge. I know that you really helped to show me a lot. I think that one thing that just struck me, and I think this is true with everything that you do, is that working with somebody else really helps to make a better product, and like you took my idea, Randy, and I remember it was it was gonna be populated vertically rather than horizontally. And like you totally like suggested something that made more sense, and then we just kind of worked together to make a better product. So I think that, not something that surprised me, but I think that just it showed me that like working with someone, getting eyes on it that are not your own, it will give you a better, more intuitive like product. Um,
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Like, I think there are parts of the community where that are working really well. I think in terms of collaboration and sharing, but like that kind of
mhm.
live collaboration,
Yeah.
maybe there are ways we can do more there because I think there are lots of people who would maybe be interested in kind of like some sort of ad hoc like builder office hours kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
how would you think about this problem? And I think a lot of users would actually have great feedback on that.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. Would you consider building another template and sharing it? And if you did, what would it be?
I've been thinking about another idea that it's like such a seed in my mind, but like having a template for couples to track their spending together, um, and have it in a way where they can have their own spending, joint spending, and then have them have it as transparent or private as they want, because it varies in between, having everything seen by each other versus not. I don't know. It's just something that I want to start thinking about and maybe propose in a future challenge. Because my wife and I, like, we both want to track our spending, but like it's kind of hard on one spreadsheet. But we're working on thinking of a way to do it better. So maybe you'll see an idea, but I don't know. Still thinking.
I love that idea. We get that a lot in support, but then I've also
Mhm.
seen tons of community threads about it too. So
Mhm.
that would be awesome. I know it's like a need that we haven't quite filled with like, core products. So it'd be cool to
Yeah.
see a community solution out there about it. Were you going to say something, Randy? Because I got really enthusiastic about that.
No,
So I
I
didn't.
agree. Like, it's something we've talked about, and I think Google Sheets has kind of unique collaboration features that make it a really great platform for that. But I agree, we don't really have a great solve for it yet.
Yeah, cool.
Well, if that is it for questions, Brad is into the builder's office hours. That would be fun. Maybe we should see if there's a way to.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, cool. We'll think on that and see if there's a good way to do something like that. Right now, we don't have a new uh, builders challenge set up. Heather and I are starting to think on like what would be a good theme and when to do that. But hopefully, that's not super far out, kicking out some new version of that sort of contest. Cool. All right. Well, Kat, thank you so much for what you contributed, the idea, all the hard work for this webinar. It's been really fun, kind of getting to know you and kind of seeing your idea come to life.
Of
And thanks for
course,
sharing it
yeah.
today.
Thank you guys, and thank you for everyone for attending. Let us know if you have any suggestions to the travel planner. And I look forward to seeing you guys use it.
Awesome.
Thanks so much,
All right.
Kat. Thanks,
Take care,
y'all.
everyone.
Take care.